to reality.
Peace, blessings, and black love. This is Amandla, Awethu, coming to you black at it again. In this episode, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to discuss the mindset of basically your Western women. And I want to say all women, but I want to say the Western women because, again, this is a social experiment, if you understand what I'm saying. The female, the female in question lived her life as a lesbian, a white female lesbian. And in her mindset, she thought, like everybody thinks, that men have it easier. Women typically think men have it easier in the world because for the most part, we take what we want versus ask for what we want. You know, women are more conniving. Women are more manipulative, whereas men are less of those things. We both do those things, but we're less of those things. So women have the mindset that life is easier for us because we take. We don't have to ask. Or we're psychologically strong enough to go ahead and do the work to level up to get to what we want versus timid and waiting on someone to come by and give it to us. Before I continue, I want to say like, share, and subscribe if you have not already subscribed. Definitely share it to your friends and family. And if anything, more than anything, at least hit that like button because that goes towards the algorithm and it lets me and others know who's paying attention or if they like or dislike the content. That is the issue why we're having an issue with the gender. One gender says life is easier for you all because the way that they look at it. They always are always saying, well, if I was a man, I would be blase, blase, blah. But you can't be blase, blase, blah if you were a man because then the competition becomes more stiffer. Women think that life, they can have all those things that a man has as long as they get to keep the attributes that a woman has. So if they can navigate throughout life the same way they are currently navigating through life, plus have the attributes that men have, then they're saying that they'd be a perfect specimen, androgynous. What we as men are saying is the only real reason why your life is actually made easier to begin with is because we as men, we are doing specific things and saying specific things, building specific things to make life easier for not only you, female, but for anybody that needs that assistance, even if it's a male or a weaker male or a male that's a young male or a male that's a handicapped person. We are doing everything we can to make the environment a more pleasant place, period. But because you are female, you are under the mindset that we are not, well, not necessarily that we are not, but you are under the mindset that your life is made difficult because you can't control us. We don't mind as men you controlling us. What we as men do mind is you betraying us. And if you look at the black community, the American black community, or the black American community, the women are betraying the men. Men are cheating on women. Men are abusive. Okay. But men aren't trying to get legislation pulled to where they can go after men. Well, not go after men, but go after women. If you look at any civilization, majority of the civilizations that went down is when women came into power. Well, why does it happen when the women come into power? It happens because what women do is they undo all of those, anything that prohibited her from doing whatever she wasn't allowed to do when those men were in charge. Now that she's in power or she's coming to power, she's going to take all those prohibitions away. And she's going to delve more into sexual liberation. That's her spirit energy, sexual liberation. Let me do this and let me do that, which she's entitled to do that. However, you also have to remember balance. If you're operating that way, then you also subject yourself to whatever it is that we, the men, don't like. We can't marry you if we don't like that. We can't invest in you if we don't like that. We can't knock you up with a baby if we don't like that. If we don't like something, we have the right not to participate. Whereas modern women, they use the system in the government, and they use condoms, and they use certain birth control things to force you to participate. So even though we don't want to have the child, the female would say, well, give me the money if you want me to have an abortion. You give the female the money to have the abortion. She says, okay, I'll go down there and I'll take care of it. 3 weeks, 5 weeks later, you run into her again. She said, oh, I decided to keep it. Okay. Well, where is the money? Oh, I used it for this and I used it for that. Then the next thing you know, you're in court child support because she forced you to participate. Yes, you could also use the narrative of don't ejaculate inside of them. But you got to remember the numbers. It's not the statement that I'm talking about, it's the numbers. Some men are going to be a little bit more protective of their semen. Some men aren't. The women are going to more or less hover around the men that are less likely protective of their semen. So if you meet a kid that he's on the right track, and he look like he's going to have a beautiful future, women are typically going to shy away from him or that group of men because those men are more disciplined, they're more this, they're more that, they're more protective of their semen, so they're less likely to get a female pregnant outside of wedlock and definitely before they're ready to. So women are hanging around Pookies and Ray Rays because Pookies and Ray Rays, are less likely to operate discipline, and we're like, I don't care, so what? And we'll deal with the consequences later, forcing us to participate. When she operates that way, that puts us at a disadvantage because now she can go on throughout life doing whatever she wants to do. She can operate at a $40,000 a year level, or she can operate at an $80,000 a year level because what she needed between point A and point B is she needed time. That baby gives her time. Gives her time to go to school. It gives her time to get some food, shelter, and clothing. It gives her time to get out of her mama's house, and it gives her time to adapt, time to adjust. Then once she does adapt and once she does adjust, then she can say, I can do better now. It's not that she cannot do better or she can do better. She says to herself now that she can do better. However, you paid the price. Your children don't like you, your finances suffered, and you had two incomes going in two different directions where we are trying to tell the women we're better as one, we're better as one, we're better as one, we're better as one. Everybody is saying two is better than one. However, the way that the way that women in general operate is they believe solo dolo. They're better separate. I wanted you guys to hear what this lady says. She's a white lesbian feminist who thought that men's lives were easier simply because they were men. She thought men's lives were easier because they get privilege, white male privilege or heterosexual male privilege. That's that intersectionality feminist stuff. It's like always an angle. It's always an angle that goes back to you being a male. And nothing stands for character. Nothing stands for discipline. Nothing stands for devotion. Nothing stands for nothing stands for a person was patient, diligent, and trying to do his best. It's always just because you're a male and you get the magical privilege. Roll the tape.
Star, but today Norma Benson is getting the full-blown glamour treatment. Nora is a writer, and one of these shots will adorn the cover of her new book.
This wasn't just a stunt. This was about learning. This is a human project. It was about finding something out about the human creature, and I learned it the best possible way because I went through it.
What Nora went through, or more accurately, what she became in the last 2 years, was a man.
Yeah, a little bit shorter on the top. Okay.
No, Nora didn't get a sex change operation. She did it the old-fashioned way, with acting and a disguise. At 5'10", 155 pounds, and wearing men's size 11 shoes, Nora was a natural. Growing up in the Midwest with her actress mother, lawyer father, and 2 older brothers, Nora was a tomboy with a flair for the dramatic. She says she's still a tomboy, and in fact is a lesbian, living in Midtown Manhattan with her partner Lisa.
I think we can work with this.
Her transformation into the guy she calls Ned begins with a buzz cut, baggy men's clothes, and a too small sports bra to flatten her breasts. She even wore a little padding and a jock strap.
I also try to think, well, what kind of guy is Ned, and get.
For the rest, she enlisted the help of makeup artist Ryan McWilliams.
She just came to me and said, Ryan, I need to turn into a man. The hair smells can make it, right?
And so they came up with a method of shredding braided wool into whisker-sized bits and gluing it onto her face.
Women have much stronger nasal resonance as a
And then
rule.
there's the theatrical component.
So just easy Tarzan out of your chest a little. Good. And then
Juilliard voice teacher Kate Murray coached Nora for months on a program of movement, breathing, and speaking.
I want you to be the best man you can be. I
All
want
to
you to
incorporate some of the subtle and not so subtle characteristics of being a guy.
notice what men do. If they need to suddenly grab a taxi, hey, they just do that. Whereas women will ask for a taxi instead of demand one.
When all the pieces are together, hair, makeup, voice, posture, style, the transformation is complete. And Nora Vincent becomes Ned Vincent. One of these shots will be the second photo on the book cover. The book, Self-Made Man, is out today and is about Nora's 18 months living as Ned.
I wanted to enter male spheres of interest and see how men are with each other. I wanted to make friends with men. I wanted to know how male friendships work from the inside out.
Ned's first act as a newly minted male was to join that quintessential bastion of camaraderie, a men's bowling team. The only problem was, she's a terrible bowler.
I probably bowled before this 3 times in my life, and that was, in high school when you do it with both hands, So it was just insane for me to walk into this place without any.
And why didn't they just run you out of town when they saw how bad you were?
It's an amazing thing because I think that shows you the generosity.
It's amazing because it shows you the generosity that they have. So apparently women are running around thinking that men are aggressive and mean towards each other, but when in reality we're actually kind and we get along pretty well when we are around each other. So what's so amazing about that? Why is the generosity so amazing? They think we're brutes.
It's an amazing thing because I think that shows you the generosity that they have.
It was the first of Nora's many surprises. She thought these guys from a working-class Pennsylvania neighborhood would mock Ned's bowling and reject him as a guy. But from their first meeting, they accepted Ned.
The handshake was unbelievable. It blew me away the first time I shook hands with a guy, a strange guy. And I was amazed because you think of women, we're so nice, we're so easy, men are so mean. Complete opposite.
Hey, baby.
And I felt as comfortable as I could feel right away. They just took me in. No questions asked.
This is the first time the guys are coming face-to-face with the female version of Ned.
Would you have known me on the street?
No.
No. Good. Good.
Taller than I remember.
Yeah, I know. You're shorter.
She found that all the cussing and good-natured ribbing is just how men often show affection for each other.
All that cussing and stuff is really not affection. I know how they interpret it, but it's really not affection, emotional affection, camaraderie. It's boundary setting. We speak that way to let the others know, whoever we're speaking to, that this is who we are, this is what time it is, and this is how far we're willing to go. Because you got to remember, those are the same things that also cause one of us to go upside your head, because you crossed the boundary, not affection. So when they interpretate who we are, since we're more militaristic, and we're more aggressive, we have to do certain things and we have to speak a certain way in order to make sure we level set this environment that we are in, so that we can tell each individual member how we conduct ourselves so we can go home peacefully. It's not affection. It's a boundary setter.
She found that all the cussing and good-natured ribbing is just how men often show affection for each other.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. That's right. I forgot all about that.
Did you know, based on watching her bowl? I mean, the joke was she bowled like a girl.
Well, we had our suspicions then. These guys did. I just maybe Ned was everybody else.
Really?
Yeah, everybody has their own style.
Right, but my style was amazing.
style is this. Near the end of the team's run, Nora decided to reveal herself as a woman. Nervous about how they'd react, she tested the waters with the one guy she was closest to. She took Jim out for a drink.
So she sits you down, she's very serious, and she says, I'm going to tell you something that's going to blow your mind. And what did you say?
So the only thing that would blow my mind was he told me that you were a girl, and then she was a guy. And she goes, well, you're half right.
The she Jim's talking about is Nora's partner Lisa, who the team had met several times. Jim assumed they were Ned and Lisa, a heterosexual couple.
But you didn't believe her at first.
At first, well, I was still in shock. I said, how can this possible? Where would this come from? This is just a regular Monday night. I was out bowling having a good time a few minutes ago. Now I'm trapped in this bizarre conversation about your name isn't Ned anymore,
Later, Jim told the rest of the team, who all took it well.
What do you think Nora expected to find in a bowling alley full of guys?
Expected to find like a bunch of guys just talking about women's private parts and a bunch of racists, and I think kind of that's what she came into this thinking.
They really showed me up as being the one who was really judgmental.
Both genders judge, both genders project. However, when I speak the way that I speak, I'm trying to put percentages. When you're in a hostile environment, you're going to acquiesce to that environment. You're going to acclimate to that environment. You're going to be on guard in that environment if it's a hostile environment. Of course, women are very judgmental, or this female would be very judgmental because she's coming in with a preconceived notion. The preconceived notion is that men are Bam Bam from Flintstones, or men are brutes, men are rough, rugged, and raw. Men are mean, men are toxic. She's coming into the equation already predetermined that this is going to be a bad experience. So she's having a bad experience psychologically, and then she's going to look for it to be a bad experience in the real world. But we are constantly telling them, and for the viewing audience, we are constantly telling you guys, at the table, you can theorize anything you want to theorize at the table. The reason why it doesn't work in reality is because the real world says different things. The real world says both of us are playing a crucial role in messing both of us up. There is no one thing, this is doing it more and that's doing it more. Both of us have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Both of us. The problem is that too many people report the news, or too many people report the series of events biased or one-sidedly. Of course, she went in with a bias. She's a white, lesbian, female, feminist.
They really showed me up as being the one who was really judgmental, because they were the ones who took me in, not knowing anything about me. They were the ones who made me their friend, and, no judgments attached.
Who thinks that men have it easier?
Like, Nora and Jim became closer friends once he knew that he was a she. Now Jim was willing to speak more personally and openly, like about his wife's cancer. Nora came to see that between men, intimacy is sadly lacking.
There's a tremendous potential for tenderness between men, and I'm not sure that it's always realized, and it's...
There's a tremendous lacking of intimacy between or towards men, and I'm not really sure anybody realizes it. Of course, we as the men or the males know that we are lacking emotion, we are lacking affection, we are lacking forgiveness, we are lacking grace. We know that because we're the victims, or we're the individuals being penalized or punished. The reason why the majority of the world don't realize what we as men are going through or how we're suffering is because, for one, the media, the news, and other people's personal perspectives on how or why that individual is hurting. So if that individual has a negative or bad experience, they're going to go run, tell someone else who hurt me. Who hurt you? They're going to go run and say it was a man that did this to me. So what happens is the listening audience, whether it happened to you or not, the spectator, the listener, you're going to think that the men are the root cause or the culprit or the big bad wolf. So you don't turn around and have compassion or empathy or sympathy for us. You pretty much punish us for the things that other men or another male has done. When in reality, it's not all of us, it's a few of us or some of us, or it's just a perspective. But we are suffering emotionally. We don't need therapy. We need for you to stop fucking with us.
There's a tremendous potential for tenderness between men, and I'm not sure that it's always realized, and it's terribly sad.
Cracking the mystery of a boys' night out is one thing, but what about the explicit world of a man's sexuality?
I really ran smack up against the difference between male and female sexuality, is that female sexuality is mental.
We as men know sex or sexual attraction is more physical than mental or visual, right? We know that. The issue is trying to compel or convince or teach or tell the other females that it doesn't mean to us what you think it means to you. Which means when we're trying to have sexual intercourse, we really just want to bust a nut. We want a climax. We want that thing. We don't want to marry every female that we have sex with. We don't even want to take them out to dinner. We just want to get this one off. The reason why the women are having a difficulty with understanding that is because that's their power, which basically means if this female can get me to have intercourse with her, then possibly she can get me to get rid of my main chick and replace my main chick with my side chick. That is the way that the women process it. So they're constantly in fear that they're going to be replaced via the sex. Well, you chose, is that what you really want? We've all heard of it. It's not that's what we really want. I am attracted to it though, but that's not what we want, or else we would have chose it. In many, many cases, we choose the one that we have because for the one that we have, they have other attributes that mean more to us than their extremities. Well, then why would you do, and why would you, the problem really comes down to is we don't really find that many women that are perfect like that. We don't find that many women that are well-rounded like that. We don't find that many women that are nice internally, character, loyal, devoted, and can put it down in the bedroom or have those external parts. We don't find that. And when we do find it, that means we got to pay a heavy price. So we will try to keep the one that we married, but we will dip off. I don't know when we're going to dip off, but we will dip off. All men don't dip off though. Some men don't dip off, but I'm only speaking of why women think it's more than what we think it is. We only think of it as sex. That's it. When we're with the one that we're with, it becomes emotional. When we're with our main chick, our wives, or our significant others, the one that bears our name or the one that we're sharing bills with, it becomes emotional with her. It does not become emotional with anybody else. But we as men, we learn that it's emotional for women or the woman is broken. If it's emotional for women, then that means something is wrong either with her or with what you're doing in order for her to either turn on those emotions or turn off those emotions. If it is emotionless and she's doing it, that means something else is broken psychologically. Because a female can't just randomly allow another human being in her body. That's a safety mechanism. That means she feels safe. And if she feels safe, something is missing to make her feel like this is safe. The problem is in our culture, in our community is they are taking down the safety parameters. A woman shouldn't be running around with 100 bodies at 18. A female shouldn't be running around with 300 bodies at 32, but they are because they have already dialed back the parameters, the safety parameters. So when women look at us for cheating on them, we're not really looking at it the way that they look at it. We're looking at it in the midst that, man, that girl don't even mean anything to me. Forgive me. I'm yours no matter what you think. That's the way we think of it. The women think of it, well, you shouldn't have done it. You broke my trust. Her trust isn't that you're going to go get someone else. Her trust is one day you're going to replace her for another female and she can't do anything about it. That's the trust that she's talking about. So we have to get to an understanding as men. Even though we may feel this particular way about it, we're going to have to teach the next generation how to process it so that it doesn't hurt them moving forward.
I really ran smack up against the difference between male and female sexuality is that female sexuality is mental. It's up here. And male sexuality is a bodily function. It's a necessity. You just have to do it.
When we come back, Nora goes to strip clubs in the company of men as a man. Over the 18 months of venturing out in the world as a man, Nora Vincent guesses she put on Ned's whiskers and clothes about 150 times. After the bowling league, she was ready for love and sex.
You went to a couple of sex clubs. What were you trying to get at?
Well, at first I thought, this is sort of the quintessential guy thing to do, right? The bachelor party at the strip club. When I told people initially that I was doing this, they'd say, oh, you gotta go to a strip club.
She says the clubs were obviously sexual, but once again lacking in intimacy, which leaves men emotionally frustrated.
I saw the men there. I saw the looks on their faces. I saw them sitting alone, nursing their bourbon, and this is not about appreciation of women, of course. It's not about appreciation of their own sexuality. It's about an urge. and that's not always that pleasurable, really.
She said it's about an urge. It's really not all that sexual, really. When we try to tell our significant others, our wives, our girlfriends, our sisters, our whoever, that we're not looking for love, we're not looking for an emotional connection. It is not about replacing our main chick. It's just a sexual desire that we have. And we understand that with these women, this is how we release that sexual tension. But we can't explain it to them because the value of what it is to them, it is not the value that it is to us. To us, it's pleasure, sex. To them, it's acknowledgement. It's this is what I use to put food on my table. This is what I use to get cover. This is what I use to get protection. I use this, my body, in order to secure me a place on earth. So even though you, male, may not hold it in that regard, I do. And I don't believe you, male, don't think so much about it when men throughout history have gone through war over it. So they don't believe us when we are explaining to them, well, even though we may go to war over it, we're not going to war over it as in don't nobody touch it. We're really going to war over the principle. Meaning if I said that's off limits and you touch it, I can replace whatever it is that you touch. That's my car. Don't steal my car. Somebody steals my car, and if you're the right people and you're connected, you catch them, you break them. Well, you're not breaking them because they stole the car, because you can replace the car. You're breaking them because you have to be a man of your word, or else it's going to keep happening. So it's hard to tell the female, we're not going to war over you because it's you. We're going to war over you because we wrote a check our ass can't cash. So in order to try to keep our reputation afloat, we go to war, but we're not going to war over vagina. We're going to war over the principle.
This is not about appreciation of women, of course. It's not about appreciation of their own sexuality. It's about an urge, and that's not always that pleasurable, really.
These guys who go to these high-priced clubs would say, this isn't about pain, it's about pleasure.
Men have had the tears and the emotional expression sort of pounded out of them from an early age, and so by the time they're men, they don't even have the vocabulary anymore, or the emotional awareness to really say what they're feeling.
For the project, Ned dabbled in the art of picking up a woman.
Where'd your friend go?
We went with him to this bar, wearing hidden cameras.
It's my friend JC, I'm Ned.
Nora was reminded that in this arena, it's women who have all the power.
We sit there and we, just with one word, no, will crush someone. And the thing is, we don't have to do the part where you cross the room and you go up to a stranger and say the first words. And those first words are so hard to say without sounding like a cheese ball or sounding like a jerk or whatever else.
Yeah, what do you guys do?
Nora says the brush-off Barbara Jones gave Ned was typical.
She was just sort of emblazoned with hostility. You know, just looked at you and you saw everything cross her face, which was, oh God, help me, not again. I'm trying to have a drink with a friend and I gotta deal with you.
Barbara was trying to dispose of Ned before her friend returned from the bathroom. But Ned returned and told Barbara the truth about her gender.
You gave us all the lines, like, trying to get rid of us. And as a woman, I have such sympathy. I'm like, oh, I hate being this guy that you're trying to get rid of.
Talking to a woman, Barbara seemed more open and friendly, and in the end, actually apologized for how she had treated Ned.
So sorry for the addiction. Please.
Does that kind of living in the skin of a man in the bar scene, in the dating scene, give you a different kind of respect for men?
It gives me a certain definite sympathy. And I don't mean that there's any disrespect, but it just makes me understand what's going on.
Nora, as Ned, also went on about 30 dates with women, mostly arranging them on the internet.
Did you have any fun?
Rarely.
It was just an
pretty
ordeal.
unpleasant, yeah.
She says the pressure of Ned having to prove himself was grueling. Nora was surprised that many women had no interest in a soft, vulnerable man. Nora was surprised that many women had no interest in a soft, vulnerable man. Nora was surprised that many women had no interest in a soft, vulnerable man. Nora was surprised that many women had no interest in a soft, vulnerable man.
My prejudice was that the ideal man is a woman in a man's body. And I learned, no, that's really not. There are a lot of women out there who really want a manly man. My prejudice was that the ideal man is a woman in a man's body. And I learned, no, that's really not. There are a lot of women out there who really want a manly man. My prejudice was that the ideal man is a woman in a man's body. And I learned, no, that's really not. There are a lot of women out there who really want a manly man.
Ultimately, Ned told most of his dates that he was Nora. Many of the women reacted angrily, but usually just for a little while. Some women wanted to continue the relationship.
They remained interested in pursuing something further, so whereas
Sexually.
yeah, and that was heterosexual women who, that's what I'm saying, it's all up here, because they said, well, we connected, and there's something, I really like you and I don't care. How many guys would do that? That's the difference between male and female sexuality right there.
Nora says she found differences not only in sexuality and intimacy, but in every walk of life.
I'm in the market for a car, and
Take, for example, shopping for a new car. Going in as Nora, the sales pitch quickly becomes flirtatious.
Any guy who gets in is going to feel like, okay, this girl's
I'm gonna date this girl just for a car.
I didn't say
But going back to the same salesman as Ned, the tone was all business, and the talk was all about performance.
They have a 3-liter Duratec V6 engine.
And in the end, a personal touch for Nora, the salesman would never have offered Ned.
All right, thank you. You're welcome.
In Nora's final months as Ned, she upped the ante, infiltrating all male inner sanctums. But after 18 months of deception, she was unraveling, and the play acting at a men's wilderness encounter group would begin to scare her.
One guy had chopped up a log pretending it was his wife. So I thought, great, we're gonna have axes and knives. So I was terrified.
Having survived strip clubs, dating, and a bowling league, Nora Vincent wanted Ned's last days to be among men only, in private and intimate surroundings. Nora, a lapsed Catholic, thought the cloistered inner world of a monastery would be ideal. Ned managed to live for 3 weeks as a trainee. The monks, she says, were pious, smart men, but they were still men.
what made it prototypically male? What do you mean by that?
The breakdown in communication, the desperate need for male intimacy, and the lack of ability to give it, really painful.
Nora says the monks were hostile to her feminine side. She says she was ostracized because of the monks' assumptions about her sexual orientation.
Ned was really at the center of it because he was an effeminate man, and many of them thought I was gay. As one of them told me in confession, I said, I have something to confess to you. And he said, well, I think I know what it is. And I said, what? And he said, well, you're gay. And I said, well, yeah, but not in the way you think.
Loneliness can't hide.
Nora thought the perfect end to her 18-month saga was to join a men-only therapy group, a place where guys tried to bond and show their emotions instead of hiding them.
They don't get to show the weakness. They don't get to show the affection, especially with each other. And so often all of their emotions are shown in rage.
And they kept talking about their rage, often their rage toward women, and what they would do physically and violently towards women.
Right. A lot of this was blowing off steam. It's sort of talking about the things that need to be said that you would never do. I mean, they would talk about fantasizing about chopping up their wives or something. It's not that they would ever do that, but it was a way to get out the blackest thoughts.
He doesn't like doing that work, but he can't quit.
Nora began to empathize with the fear and stress men feel for having to always be the strong provider. Once again, some group members thought Ned was gay, but no one suspected he was a woman. After 8 sessions, the group went on a backcountry retreat, but Nora's 18 months of being an imposter was closing in on her.
The pressure of being someone that you're not and being the fear of discovery and the deceit that it involves piles up and piles up. So by the time I got around to doing this men's group, it was really reaching critical mass.
On the retreat, her fear became palpable.
And I was out in the woods with a bunch of guys who have rage issues about women, and I was in drag, and I thought, oh God, what am I doing?
Nora was unraveling. She felt guilty about lying, as though she should be punished. In the final ritual of the weekend, the men were to act out the problems unearthed at the retreat with a partner.
And you asked that he harm you.
Yeah, I did. At that point, I was starting to really kind of crack up. I was really...
You were coming unglued.
Yeah.
So you were asking this guy to cut
me. So self-mutilation is very much a female thing, and I think it was my way of paying the penalty for what I felt I had done.
Nora was not harmed physically, but she continued her emotional descent, and a week later checked into a hospital with severe depression. Identity, she concluded, was not something to play around with.
When you mess around with that, you really mess around with something that you need that helps you to function. And I found out that gender lives in your brain. And I found out that gender lives in your brain. And I found out that gender lives in your brain. And I found out that gender lives in your brain. And it's something much more than costume. And I really learned that the hard way. Men are suffering. They have different problems that women have, but they don't have it better. They need our sympathy, they need our love, and they need...
This is another reason why I try to emphasize or stress the greatest love. The greatest love is not really between a man and a woman. The greatest love is actually, in my point of view, the way I see the world, is between man and man. As long as man keeps portraying man over vagina, then the world is really going to be an unpleasant place, because you're fighting over something that can easily be replaced. There are so many women out there that you don't have to fight over this particular piece. There are so many of them. But because we betray each other and because we value it so much, we betray each other. But if we were really, really strong and disciplined, and we looked at each other as ourselves, there would be no way we would attack ourselves over that. That would also allow us to protect them in a better way. Which means, as long as you are under my protection, as long as you are under my roof, as long as you are in my proximity, you're safe. You're safe from the big bad wolves, the lions, tigers, and bears. But because men betray each other over vagina and the women know it, the women are actually running the show. Whether it be direct or indirect, she's running the show.
Men are suffering. They have different problems than women have, but they don't have it better. They need our sympathy, they need our love, and they need each other more than anything else. They need to be together.
Do you think women understand what it's like to be a man?
Not at all. No clue. No idea.
John Gornishelli thinks Nora's conclusions that men are just as emotionally vulnerable as women are important and will be taken seriously because they came from a woman. And both John and Nora are happy she is a she. The irony is not lost on Nora that it took a trip into manhood to help her appreciate her own femininity.
I'm so much closer to myself than I ever was, that I really like me. I really like being me, and I really like being a woman.
Did you like being a woman before that?
I did, but I like it more now because I think it's more of a privilege. Men are suffering. They have different problems than women have, but they don't have it better. They need our sympathy, they need our love.
So for those that are able to, I want you guys to look at your screen, because not only do I want to speak it, as I told you sometimes before, you also have to include the where you're getting your information from, so individuals don't think that you're just pulling it out of thin air. Nora Vincent, who chronicled passing as a man, is dead at 53. The female went on further to explain that she believed men had it harder than women. Yes, in the interview she says that men have different issues. But later on she's explaining not only do men have different issues, they actually have a harder time at life in general. So when you read the article, in the winter of 2003, Nora Vincent, at 35 years of age, began practicing passing as a man. With the help of the makeup artist, she learned to simulate stubble by snipping bits of wool and painting them to her chin. This is basically explaining what the video had already spoke about. Second paragraph, she trained for months with a vocal coach. Third paragraph, she did so in Self-Made, and when the book came out in 2006, it was a nearly instant bestseller. Fourth paragraph, but the book was no joke. It was a nuanced and thoughtful work. It drew comparisons to Black Like Me, the white journalist John Howard Griffin's 1961 book about the experiences passing as a black man in the segregated Deep South. David Kemp, writing in the New York Times book review called Miss Vincent's book, Rich and Audacious. Miss Vincent was a lesbian. She was not transgender or gender fluid. She was, however, interested in gender and identity. As a freelance contributor at the Los Angeles Times, The Village Voice, and The Advocate, she had written essays on those topics that inflamed some readers. As you go on reading and reading and reading, what you have to understand is, in her year and a half living as Ned, Vincent put him in a number of situations. Here it says stereotypical, hyper masculine situations. But the video explains all that it's reading. But the video didn't go in and tell you the end result. The end result is, when you read this paragraph right here I have on the screen, it says she was suffering. She wrote for the same reason that many of the men she met were suffering. Their assigned gender roles she found were suffocating them and alienating them from themselves. This is not true. We're not suffocating from ourselves, and we're not being alienated from ourselves. It's the environment itself. It's the culture. Well, what do you mean? Men are good at being men, and men are good at being men around other men. I use the statement, men betray other men for some vagina, for pussy. Once men stop betraying men for pussy, the world in itself would be better. You carve up your section, you have at it. I carve up my section and I have it. And we'll do what we can do to limit procreation. We wouldn't have to go to war. So we're not suffering in the concept that she says, or psychologically or emotionally. We're not suffering that way. Again, she's still a female, so she's going to have a female's point of view on it. We're suffering because when we tell you all, women, that it isn't what y'all say it is, you all, women, you get legislation passed, you get into your husband's ear, you get your son, you get your brother, you get somebody to fight us on your behalf because of how you feel. Remember in the video, she says, I'm going to go back in the video because in the video she says something to the nature that women's problems are in their head. Well, if we're trying to explain to you most of that stuff is in your head, we're also trying to say it isn't like that in real life, but nobody believes us. The idea, I'm reading again. Miss Vincent practiced another feat of immersive journalism for her next book, Voluntary Madness. My Year Lost and Found in the Loony Bin. She went to a clinic. The video did explain she ended up going to like a clinic in Switzerland. Or did I read that? I might have read that. Not that the video brought it up. I might have read that. Not that the video brought it up. Because a lot of this reading is like a lot of the reading in itself is just fillers. So you got to read through a lot of mumble jumble in order to get to what you're getting after. Increasing myriad of depression. Miss Vincent found herself increasingly mired in depression and juggling a cocktail of medications. The book's conclusion did not endear her to reviewers as she exhorted those in extremis like her to move on and put your boots on. Then it goes on to talk about her birthday. I'm trying to get you to understand. No, not understand, but I'm trying to get you to get past the fluff. Because we don't care about her background. We don't care about her family. We don't care about her upbringing. I'm trying to get you to understand what she did it towards the end. I just got to scroll through and find it myself. I should have highlighted it. Yeah, like I said, I read it. The video didn't mention it. Well, the video that I'm presenting didn't mention it. Miss Vincent, as you read on your screen, Miss Vincent died July 6th at a clinic in Switzerland. She was 53 years. Her death, which was not reported at the time, was confirmed on Thursday by Justine Hardy, a friend. The death, she said, was medically assisted, or what is known as a voluntary assisted death. Instead of it being a suicide, it'd be like a euthanization. Right. So I presented you guys a book called Doublespeak. And what it really is it tells you how the United States government and people in general, but the United States government says one thing when they mean another thing in order to stay politically correct. We call it code. So they can practice white supremacy racism in a devilish way. You wouldn't be able to determine it or figure it out because you don't understand what the words themselves mean. So you guys are aware of Dr. Kevorkian. Dr. Kevorkian was a Jew. And in his time, he was going around helping people in their lives on their wishes, on their behalf. So if they came into the hospital and they were on some kind of medication, cancer or whatever, Alzheimer's or whatever, and they were dying of a slow death, in a window of time, in a window of opportunity, they would reach out to Dr. Kevorkian, or their siblings or their spouses or whoever's caring for them would reach out to Dr. Kevorkian and ask Dr. Kevorkian to make a visit. When Dr. Kevorkian would make a visit within that window of time, because again, when you're dying of a slow death, you're not always 100% control of your mental faculties. So whenever he made that visit, that means that's that visit, and it was documented. This is what he was doing. Well, he did a lot of time for doing that once they caught on to what he was doing, but he was explaining to people that people don't want to die that way. They would rather die in control. They locked him up. I want to say he didn't. I want to say they locked him up. I want to say they sentenced him to 20, but I think he did like 19 to 15 or something like that. While you're on camera, I'm gonna look it up right now so we can we nip this in the bud. I want to see how many years he did. Jack Kevorkian, the controversial American doctor who claimed to have assisted more than 100 suicides, has died at 83. I know he's dead. I'm trying to get to the point where it shows us how much time he got. As you see your screen, in 98 he was convicted, second-degree murder, and served 8 years of 10 to 25. I knew they gave him a long time, but I knew he didn't do all of it. He was released on parole in 2007 on condition he would not offer advice about participate in or be present at the act of any type of euthanasia to any other person, as well as neither promote nor talk about the procedure of assisted suicide. Well, understand how it works when you are a pioneer or you're just a person who gets it. So when you can continue to look at your screen, now you're looking at Nora Vincent, and it says here she went to Switzerland to get a voluntary assisted death. Well, I'm trying to get you to understand why we are having such a problem. These things are not genetic. These things are socially constructed. Socialization. Women don't think that they're men because they are women. Women don't think that they're men because they are biological women. Women don't think that they're men because they just happen to like women. These things are psychological. Many of this is psychological. Many of it is environmental. So that means if you can get if you can get these people out of this environment, chances are they would heal. They would naturally heal. But because this environment, it structures itself in a way that says, nobody can be more powerful than me. Nobody can test my power. Nobody can go up against me. What the power structure then does is it floods the market with a lot of distractions. When it floods the market with a lot of distractions versus having the individual society focus, then those individuals living within that society, what they'll do is they'll do a form of retreating. So instead of facing the enemy, instead of facing the obstacle, they would say, you can't beat them, join them. However, they don't necessarily choose join them, meaning let me go get educated, let me go become an oil tycoon, and let me sit at the table with them. They say, if I can't beat them, join them by at least don't make myself a target. So then they would choose homosexuality, they would choose being homeless, they would choose being drug dealers, they would choose being ball players, they would choose being cross-dressers, they would choose being something because they're trying to avoid the onslaught of the enemy. So it becomes pseudo. then you start feeling and understand what feelings are with the women, and you can't negate the feelings with the women because you need the women to be emotional. If the women were more logical, like men claim that they want, then the women would kill the men. The women would eventually kill the men. And then whatever infrastructure that the men have built, the women will either maintain it themselves, or the women will let it be destroyed and then create a different one. But if the women were more logical, we couldn't occupy the same space. This is why two men can't occupy the same space, not without coming to blows. So the men are double talking, but they're not double talking. They just don't understand the system. We're at war. We're at war in the spiritual world. We're at war in the physical world. We're at war. And if you don't want to acknowledge and accept the fact that we're at war, then you're going to come up with any and every excuse to say, no, we're not. All the while, the evidence is all around you that we're at war. So, in essence, I need the men to really focus on where our problems lie as males. Black men, we are not each other's enemy. The women are out here saying that this is what they're going to do. This is what they want to do. Sexual liberation, for the most part, helps all men because we want sex. Even if it's the heteros or the homos, the women are willing to look like men in order to have sex with men. So even if you are a homo, you prefer men, the women got a taste for that too. So you can get the best of both worlds. You can get to mitigate the shame, and you can have your sexual pleasure. For us to keep betraying each other over the women and giving the women power that they did not earn or deserve, we're actually making ourselves weaker. And the women see that, and the women take advantage of that. If you want the women to stop taking advantage of that, then the men, you're going to have to move a little bit differently. You're going to, one, have to stop betraying each other over some vagina. And then number two, if the women as a collective do not want to get on board with your system, structure, and order, and if they prefer that white man's system over what is right, listen to me say it again so you can better understand it. If they prefer white supremacy, if they prefer the government, if they prefer the sisterhood over what is right, you're going to have to remove yourself from their proximity. You can't give them access to you. This is socialization. This is pseudo. Once these men respond a certain way, then the women will respond as well. Some women are going to fight. I don't care what y'all do. And then some women are going to be like, well, I didn't know you were going to do that. I'll behave. There's a scenario for everybody, but none of them get whatever they want if the men don't do what they're supposed to do. So I humbly come to the men, and I'm being honest, to the men of all nationalities. White America is suffering because white America refuses to treat black American men with fairness, equality, and justice across the board. So white America brings in immigrants, brings in foreigners, and tries to give them some power. Well, why would white America do that if white America doesn't want nobody to have its power? Because absolute power can't rule absolutely. Not for a sustained period of time. Joseph Stalin taught you that. Mussolini taught you that. I mean, the examples are all over the place. When it's absolute and you're ruling over a long period of time, the people see you as a problem. They don't see the system as the problem. They see you as a problem. So then they go after you. And what white supremacy racism has learned is to share its power. The problem is sharing its power with people that are not going to try to do what is right. There is only sharing its power with people that are going to echo the sentiments of what is wrong. Black men are the ones that will typically try to change and do what is right. So when we get some power, we're going to try to do the right thing. That's why they don't want to give Black American men the power. They'll give it to Black Africans, but they'll give it to Black Koreans. Not Koreans, but what's that down there in the Caribbean? They'll give it to the Black Caribbean. They're not too inclined on give it to the Black Foundational American, Black ADOS, or to American Descendants of Slaves, or Black American. They're not too fond of doing that. This is why you don't see them doing it. So I urge the men across any nationalities, if you want a semblance of some of your power like the good old days, you're going to have to give the power to Black men. You're going to have to give the jobs to Black men. You're going to have to give the education to Black men. You're going to have to give the positions to Black men. And when you do that, what will ultimately happen is it will be a restoration of balance. The women have power they did not earn. The women have power they did not go to war for. The women have power they have not shed blood for. The women have power they have not created a nuclear bomb for. The women have power that they did not do anything for except lie next to you. And now your sons, white America, Asians, Hispanics, your sons are being caught in the fray because you do not want to give the power respectfully to Black American men. And they're going to run your asses in the courtroom. They're going to run you in politics because you've made it law. And she is jockeying for power. Just like the Black female is jockeying for power over the Black male, the white female is jockeying for power over the white male the exact same way. She has access to your power, not because you're saying, here, dear, here you go. She has access to your power or your throne because you've already said, as long as that Black man ain't getting it, I'm good. You're going to be dead by 75 to 82. She's going to live an extra 10, 15 years. So if you're dead by 75, 82, she's going to be living between 85 and 92. And she's going to tell the next generation of women how to maintain and take control. So by the time your grandson, well, if you're 80, by the time your third great grandson is a 5-year-old or 8-year-old child, he will have no power, but the women will have all the power. The women will have all the power because you said 100 years ago, as long as the Black man don't got it, and the lady lives about 10 to 15 years longer than her husband, you are giving your power away, and you just because you don't want the Black man to have it. Good luck with that. Warrior class, Zoo, smoke them out. Warrior class, Zoo, speak up. Warrior class, Zoo, show up. Warrior class, Zoo, peace, blessings, and Black love.
Nah. Just bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships. Because they knew death was better than bondage.
In this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
If this is the end, I'd be better off dead. I'd be better off dead. If this is the end, I'd be better off dead. I'd be better off dead.
Fair Use Act disclaimer. This site is for educational purposes only. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research.